Today we're going to be making a really simple bean recipe, which is a collaboration with my friend Babatunde in Nigeria. So we're going to be making Nigerian spicy beans with fried plantains. So this is a recipe that's really simple, but it looks quite comforting and hearty. And if you want to see the original of this, please follow this card or the link in the description to have a look at Babatunde's video. And please do support his growing and really interesting channel. I'm making about half of what Babatunde made, and I couldn't get the exact same beans that he's got. So I'm using these, which are rose cocoa beans, I presume that's how you pronounce it, which I got from the International Food Store in Portswood. Now it's interesting that Babatunde didn't soak the beans before cooking, but I think the beans we get here are a lot drier than the beans he buys there fresh at the market. They are dried beans, but they're not as dry, I think, as the ones that have been packaged for sale in the UK. So I've soaked these overnight, and they've kind of doubled in volume. I did also sift through them for debris and stones and dirt and so on. I very rarely find foreign bodies in bags of packaged beans or rice or grains. It just generally doesn't happen. I have heard of people finding stones in these, and I think I probably have found one little pebble in a bag of beans once in my life. But I did sift through them anyway before I put them in the water. So these have been soaked overnight. We're going to cook these just in water to start with, and then add the seasonings and flavourings once the beans have started to soften. So just going to drain these. And I did rinse them a couple of times last night before putting them into soak. And you can see from the footage last night that, again, there wasn't very much dirt to come off of them. And that's because the packaging process involves blowing them with air to get all the dirt and debris off of them and any adhering dust and so on. It's possible, I suppose, for dirt and stones and things to make their way through that process. It's not unheard of, but it is quite rare. Anyway, these have been washed, and I'm just going to give them another rinse now. Enough water to just cover them for now. I may add some more liquid later, and we'll get that on to boil. Just going to add a few things that weren't in Babatunde's recipe, but I'm sure he would approve of, which is a bay leaf, some fresh thyme from the garden. This is Turkish thyme I've got growing in my garden. It's lovely. Just the leaves, not the twig. And this, which is winter savoury, which is sometimes known as bean herb. It's a herb in the same family as rosemary and thyme and mint, but is especially suited, so many people say, for combining with beans. Those are going to go in to infuse their flavours into the beans. Lid on, and we just wait for that to come to the boil. Now the beans are going to need some flavouring added at various points. But the first thing we need to have ready is onion. So I'm just going to roughly chop this red onion here. And now that those beans have been bubbling away for a few minutes, onion goes in with them. We'll just have a little bit more liquid because it's not covering them. Meanwhile, we're going to prepare the other flavourings. So I got some nice tomatoes. And I don't have a grinding stone like we saw Babatunde use in his video, but I do have a food processor, so I'm going to use that. Got some Scotch bonnet peppers here. They're a little bit old and wrinkly, so I'm just going to open them up and make sure the seeds haven't gone black inside. And I might just remove a few of those seeds and pith. And I think we'll probably have 4 Scotch bonnets in that batch of beans. I think Babatunde would probably put more than that in there, but 4 seems like enough for that little batch for me. It was only 2 cups of beans. Oh, what the heck. Let's go for 5. Again, see, that's what I'm looking for. The core of the pepper there has started to go a little bit black, so I'm just going to lose that bit off the end there. Sure, it's no problem really, but it's just aesthetics. So there we go, we got peppers, tomato, and we're going to have another onion. Okay, all of that into the food processor, and we'll blend it down to a very fine paste. That probably will create a pepper spray type of situation, and you'll probably hear me coughing in a minute. Alright, and that looks pretty good. Now if you don't like hot peppers, I guess you could substitute some sweet capsicums or some smoked paprika or something like that, or just more tomatoes. These beans have had about an hour now of boiling and they're still not soft enough. Let's just have a look at one. Yeah, I mean they are softening, but that's nowhere near soft enough. Alright, I think we're there. So, yeah. Quite squishy now. So that's been about an hour and a half of total cooking time. I'm going to take that bay leaf out now because it's done its job and I don't need it in there anymore. So I think this is definitely something I would choose to do in the slow cooker in future. Just because I can leave it there all day and have the beans in the evening. So that's my tomatoes and peppers and onion paste in there. We're going to have a little bit more water and cook that for another half hour probably, just to cook those vegetables and to infuse some of their flavours into the beans. And I'm also now going to crumble in my stock cube. Probably won't add any additional salt because there's quite a bit of salt in that stock cube. Okay, I took my eye off this for just a moment too long and it did start to catch on the bottom of the pan. So I've transferred it into a smaller pan, which makes it more manageable, but also just so I didn't have that burnt caramelised layer on the bottom of the pan to cook into these beans. So I think I rescued it in time. A moment or two later and I think it would have been too far gone. But we still need to cook this for a bit longer while we carry on and fry the plantains. The beans are actually quite soft and most of them are starting to fall apart on their own now. So I think we're getting there. Time for the palm oil. Now, palm oil's got a really bad reputation and rightly so. This is not something I'm going to use a lot of in my cooking, just because, well, in fact, I contacted the company. I bought this jar for an earlier collaboration with Babatunde, and I did actually write to these guys and ask them if their palm oil was from sustainable sources. They didn't respond to me, and I think we have to assume that that means no. I'm going to put a bit more in there, just so I can definitely taste it. Yeah, it's got quite a strong aroma. It's similar, I suppose, similar sort of weird fruitiness that olive oil has, but it is very different to that. And then we're just going to let that cook away for another 20 minutes or so while we prepare the plantains. So my plantain's slightly less ripe than the one we saw Babatunde using, but I think it'll be okay. I'm probably not going to try the whole slicing along it and opening it out trick. It is quite a lot more crisp, the skin on this, than I was hoping I might be able to peel it like a banana. But no matter, I can just slice off this skin carefully. Feel free to tell me how you think I should have done that, because pretty much butchered that, I think, really. But we got something out of it in the end. And then we're just going to cut this on the diagonal into 1 centimetre slices. Give that a little bit of salt. Okay, the other one, well, the other one kind of peeled a little bit more easily, but also split in half along its length. So I think I probably should have just bought the yellow plantains rather than the green ones. But you live and learn. So these plantain slices are obviously not going to look as pretty as they should, but we'll carry on anyway. Sure, we got enough intact ones in the mix here to get a nice thumbnail for the video. So beans are onto the back burner now, so that I can fry my plantain on the front burner here. Keep a proper eye on it. I'm using a deep pan, hopefully just to catch some of the splashing, which is kind of inevitable when you deep fry things. We just need to wait for that oil to heat up sufficiently that we can then fry the plantain pieces. Beans are over here on the back burner, and we'll just keep an eye on those. Just keep them bubbling away. I've got to say, I don't like the smell of palm oil. I don't appreciate the aroma of palm oil. It's just, I guess it's whatever you're used to, but it doesn't smell pleasant to me. Right, I think this oil is pretty much up to temperature. Let's just test that with a small piece. That's looking about right. Right, those seem like they might be done to me, so we'll get them out onto some paper to drain. And now these beans, well, we can see they're starting to break up all on their own now. So I'm going to turn the heat off now, let that cool down. So second batch of plantain is cooking. Let's have a look at the first batch. So yeah, where we've got a less ripe, more starchy plantain, we've ended up with something fluffy, crisp on the outside and fluffy on the inside. Really nice. But yeah, nice and fluffy and kind of like potato, but not like potato. Okay, so that's the second batch of plantain done. We're all done now. Just got to wait for those beans to cool down, and then we'll serve up and give it a taste. Well, here we go. And so my plantain has fried up a little bit more crisp than Babatunde's, but we know why that was. That was because it was greener. And let's just give it a taste. So the beans have gone tender. In fact, some of them have just broken apart. You can see how they're just falling apart on their own. So the beans first. Yeah, and that amount of beans with that amount of peppers, yeah, it's hot and spicy for my palate, but this is about the chili heat I would expect in a curry or a chili anyway. So yeah, really delicious. And the beans just melt in your mouth. If you're from the UK, you will probably at this point be thinking, yeah, that looks like baked beans. And the texture is indeed very similar to baked beans, but the flavour, there's the chili hit. The palm oil has got quite a strong flavour of its own. I didn't appreciate the aroma of it when I was smelling it during cooking, but the flavour is actually something quite different. The flavour's, it's hard to describe, but it's got a distinctive flavour in the same way that good olive oil has. So let's try it all together. That's a really good combination. I suspect it would be better still if I'd had a riper plantain and it would have gone caramelised and soft and moist. But actually, I think I might use plantains a bit more than I currently do, because they're a great carb side for the meal. Great alternative to potatoes. So yeah, this is really good. Since I have a slow cooker, I would definitely cook this in the slow cooker in future, because it was a big faff standing over those beans, making sure they didn't dry out or burn, which I actually almost fumbled at one point. But yeah, for such a humble dish, with so few ingredients, it's really delicious. So I thought that was really interesting. I hope you did too. Don't forget to visit Babatunde's channel, link in the description and in that card. Please show your love to Babatunde, and thanks Babatunde for sharing this recipe with me. I'm really enjoying it. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.